All right, now on the matter of Judicial versus Brianna Phillips Edwards, charged in warrant number 2024 CW 71436, conspiracy to commit a crime, and 2024 CW 71406, party to the commission of a crime. Representing the state is the ADA Attorney Freeman. Representing the defendant is Attorney Clements. Attorney Freeman, your witness.
Thank you, Judge. FYI, your video isn't on. Wasn't sure if you knew that.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Detective Moore, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to provide in the matter of State of Georgia versus Brianna Phillips Edwards will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you. You can lower your hand. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
I'm Detective Tracy Moore. I'm employed with the Clayton County Police Department in the Criminal Investigation Division, Major Felony. I have been employed by Clayton County for over 10 years now, and I have been a detective for over 6 years now.
And ma'am, while working with the Clayton County Police Department, were you assigned a case involving where Miss Brianna Phillips Edwards was charged eventually with party to a crime of murder and conspiracy to commit a crime?
I was. Initially, the case was Detective Bryson's. He left the department and it was reassigned to me. Yes, ma'am.
Please tell us that when you took on this investigation, tell us initially what steps were taken.
Well, from the beginning, I think pretty much most of the detectives and supervisors were involved in this because of the nature of the case, and it was very suspicious. So you want me to start from the beginning of the case, or?
Well, tell us how you, from your investigation, what did you learn that happened from the very beginning involving our decedent, Ms. Winston?
So we learned that Brianna Winston was killed, and she was her partial remains were located in Tennessee.
How, from the beginning, Detective Moore, how was it brought to the attention of the police department that Miss Winston was missing?
So the Miss Winston's cousin, Jasmine Walker, reported her as missing to the police department.
When was that, Detective?
That was, I believe it was, I'm not sure of the date she reported. I believe it was it was either 4/1 or 4/2, I believe. But at that point, Miss Winston had been missing for a little over 2 weeks.
Yeah. She was reported missing in April of 2024.
She was. They had tried to reach out to her themselves. No one from the family had heard from her. And they went to the apartment and tried to do a welfare check, and they learned the apartment had been cleaned out, and when the apartment staff let them go in there, it smelled very strongly of cleaning supplies in the apartment.
Who had Miss Winston been residing with in the apartment?
So she did live there with her child and the father of her child, Mikhail Edwards. However, they had a previous domestic issue, and he was on bond to stay away from her. So he was not presently, I think he did go there, but he was not presently living there.
After Ms. Jackson Walker reported Ms. Winston missing, what steps did the police department take to try to locate Ms. Winston?
We reached out, we interviewed her family. We interviewed Mikhail Edwards and his mother, which he's the father of her child. Reached out to her coworkers. We got a warrant for her cell phone to see if there was any activity. I believe they attempted to get banking records to see if there was any activity, and we did, and we learned that she had gotten a tax refund that was pretty significant amount, and it had not been touched. It's just like she vanished. There was no activity on the phone. There was no activity through her financials.
Detective, how was it learned that Miss Winston was no longer alive?
So through the investigation, we had suspicions, and when we interviewed Mr. Edwards, he kept referring to her in the past tense, which that's pretty suggestive. We tracked So Mr. Edwards had a friend and he has ties to Tennessee. We tracked to a location in Tennessee where we met with a witness in the case that was not involved in the murder, but did help to dispose of Miss Winston. That witness described in great detail of what happened to her after Mikhail got up there to Tennessee with her body, and how they burned it and disposed of her body. Some of her remains were located, as well as part of a suitcase that she was taken up there in, as well as the keys to the apartment. They located with the remains keys, two keys on a key ring together. Those keys are a perfect match for Miss Winston's apartment, as well as the mailbox key to that apartment. So and plus that witness is stating that it was her and how she was killed. What he was told is how she was killed. It all matched up, and we know that that's her.
Detective, from the information that you gathered, how were you able to determine that Miss Brianna Phillips Edwards had anything to do with what happened to Miss Winston?
So we know that she was interviewed as well. So we knew through the interviews and through phone data that Mikhail Edwards, he had secretly gotten married to Miss Winston, I believe in January, which not even Mikhail's mother did not know that. So that was a surprise to her as well. But they had gotten married, and they had gone to Miss Winston's apartment at 1215 Gardenwoods Drive in College Park on the 16th after Mikhail got off of work. Mikhail had stated that he went to get I believe the Social Security card and birth certificate for the daughter that they share in order to do taxes, to do his taxes and claim the child. Brianna Phillips Edwards stated that she waited in the car while he was in there. She told detectives that it was only for a few minutes and that she was sleeping, and then it turned out it was for I believe an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes is what she stated. She told detectives initially that she had left the location to go home and get her laptop, which was not true. We know that from the phone records. And then during the interview, after she had provided a written statement, she did state that she had lied about that. She didn't know why she lied about that, and that she wanted to rewrite her written statement to correct that. And that's all on audio, video recorded interview.
Was Miss Phillips Edwards able to provide any other information, since she had stated that she gave a false statement to begin with?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Repeat that.
I'm sorry. Was the defendant Brianna Phillips Edwards, did she give any other information regarding why she provided that false statement?
She didn't. She said she didn't know why she lied. I have a reason to believe why she probably lied, but I don't know if you want me to say it or not.
Well, is it based on any information or evidence that you located?
Well, yes, it turns out she was much more involved in this than what she had previously stated. And she was trying to become she was actually in a police academy. So I'm sure she probably did not want to be associated with this type of activity.
Detectives, were you all able to, or how were you all able to determine where exactly the murder of Miss Winston took place?
We knew that the last time she was seen alive was, or that her phone was connected, connected while she was alive, was at her apartment after she had visited another friend's apartment. She had came back to that apartment in the late hours of the 16th. We know that the person that assisted Mr. Edwards in disposing of her body, he had told her that he had strangled her to death in the apartment or choked her to death in the apartment. And then he brought her up there to dispose of her body. But he made a statement to another person who gave us a statement in Tennessee.
Detective Ward, did those witnesses make any statements regarding Miss Brianna Phillips Edwards and her involvement?
So yes, so Miss Phillips Edwards told us that on the 17th that Mikhail Edwards took her vehicle to visit friends. She didn't know where, she didn't know any of his friends, she didn't have any idea what was going on, but we know that's not true. During the disposal of Miss Winston, Miss Brianna Phillips Edwards contacted the friend in Tennessee because she knew that Mr. Edwards had left his phone at his mother's residence to look like he was still staying in Georgia. So she knew to call and text that friend in Tennessee and not his phone.
Do you have those records regarding those text messages from Miss Brianna Phillips Edwards to the friend in Tennessee?
We do, and then we have his statement as well. And then when she believed that, and so she didn't call his phone. And they regularly text and communicate all day, every day. So she knew on the 17th, she did not make any attempts. When he was supposed to return, she was to report back to work to the police academy. When she, I guess, thought that he should be back, she started, I don't know a better term, but like blowing up his phone with text and calls, like asking where her car was. And she knew, so we know that she knew what he was from that up there to do. And she knew to contact the friend when she stated that he didn't have friends. She didn't know his friends. And it turns out that that friend actually came down to their secret wedding and witnessed their wedding earlier this year. And then we also know that during jail calls, she would shush him and tell him, hey, they're listening, and trying to tell him not to talk about things. But there were several instances of that, but particularly he had called her. She was, I guess, at his mother. I think she didn't want to stay in her apartment after this happened, I guess, by herself. So she stayed a lot at his mother's house. During a jail call, right after he was arrested, he told her to burn his shoes and gloves. And his family helped, and we have proof of that as well. But he told her to make sure his shoes and gloves were burned, and she tried to tell him, they're listening. You can't be talking about stuff like that on jail calls. So she knew. And then we did learn through another way that those shoes and those gloves were burned indeed at the mother's residence, but it was previous to when we did a search warrant at that residence, so we did not locate them.
Detective, from your investigation, were you able to find any kind of video footage to show any of these incidents, what happened?
So we know that we do have video of when earlier that evening, when Mr. Edwards was at work at his place of business, she was waiting in the parking lot, and she actually went into the store a couple of times and then came back out. So we know that he was with her then. We do have flock hits from the vehicle. There is video that we obtained from Miss Winston's apartment and Miss Phillips Edwards' apartment, but I don't believe it shows them actually. I think it just shows the vehicle being there. So I don't believe we have any video of it. I know there's no video of Miss Winston's like front door. You can't see who's coming in from, it's not that many cameras on the property, so you can't really see who's coming and going, but we do have the vehicle both on flock cameras and on surveillance from both her and Miss Winston's apartments.
Were there any witnesses at the apartment complex of Ms. Winston that you all were able to speak to that had information to provide?
They did canvass, the apartments. I don't think, no one heard shots or anything like that. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. Let me turn it off. No one's heard shots or anything like that. There were witnesses that told us that, she and Edwards were at the apartment cleaning out the apartment after, I don't think they knew she was missing. I think they just think she moved out or whatever, but and his family was all there clearing out Miss Winston's apartment after what we know that she had gone missing. So like throwing her stuff away, and she actually has Miss Winston's sofa is in her apartment that she has. They took her sectional to Miss Phillips Edwards' apartment.
The written statements that you mentioned and the interviews, are all those items in evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
These incidents took place in Clayton County, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I just had one question I needed to clarify, if I may.
Go ahead, Your Honor.
The new, Brianna Phillips Edwards, she was the wife, she's the individual that he married that nobody knew about. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it was in January, but they secretly got married and nobody knew except the two of them. And, yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's right. That was my question.
I don't believe Miss Winston even knew.
Okay, all right. So, Attorney Clements?
Yes, Detective, let me just ask you, I just want to get a timeline right quick. You all have evidence that the victim and Phillips Edwards and McHale Edwards all arrived between roughly 12:15 and 12:20, a little bit after midnight on the 17th, correct?
Right. So we have their statements saying that they were. We have phone records showing that they were, and we got video of the vehicle as well.
And then the car and you never see Miss Edwards get out of the car at all. Miss Phillips Edwards, correct?
You don't see anybody get out of the car, sir. It's not. We have video of it passing, but it's dark, so you can't see into the car. But she states she was in that car and she was with Mr. Edwards at his place of work just before they came to the apartment.
And she told you that she was asleep.
She said that she was in and out of sleep, so she didn't really hear any phone calls or anything like that. She did say that. But she also told us, oh, go ahead, sir. I say she also told us that she waited out there for a short time and then it changed the time, and then she stated that she left to go get her laptop from her apartment, and we know that's not true.
All right, understood. Now, and then the car left about 2 a.m. and then returned again at 4 o'clock in the morning, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And then it left the apartment at 4:41 in the morning after that, correct?
That sounds correct. Yes, sir.
And then with respect to did you have video of McHale Edwards going into the house or not?
No, we don't have anyone. There's no camera that covers the front door of Miss Winston's apartment.
Okay. And you said that she's not visible. I understand. Let me ask you this. When reviewing the text messages and the calls on that after midnight and before the morning of the 18th or whatever, the 17th, was there any threatening communications or arguments between Miss Phillips Edwards and and the victim in this case?
Between Miss Phillips Edwards and the victim?
Yes.
No, I don't believe they communicated at all on the phone.
All right. And was there any communication between Miss Phillips Edwards and McHale Edwards about any hostilities that Miss Phillips Edwards would have had towards the victim?
I don't believe so. Now, she did, so I don't want to get too more into Mr. Edwards' case because it's different, but I know that Mr. Edwards was still seeing sometimes Miss Winston, and I know that he still was kind of fixated on her. I know he was stalking her for sure, and I know that he didn't go home all the time, and I know that Miss Phillips Edwards texted him quite a bit, begging him to come home and begging him to be with her, like because he wasn't there present with her all the time. So I know they had a lot of issues in there. Like it's like he married her, but he wasn't like with her all the time. I guess he hung out with people or went to his mom's house or whatever. So I know there's a lot of that in the phone. Or he was working and she's begging him to take off and come home.
Did you see any information in the cell phones that suggested that Miss Phillips Edwards knew Mr. Edwards' friends, like all of his friends?
We know that she had called one of his friends in Tennessee. I know he had the child sometimes, and his mother had that child quite a bit, and Miss Phillips Edwards actually kept his child as well. So she knew about Miss Winston, and she knew they were going to their apartment, but I don't know if I don't know, but I would assume that she thought that relationship was just them being parents together still. But as far as between the Miss Winston and Miss Phillips Edwards, I did not see anything in that.
Okay. Now let's go to the time that you spoke to the friend in Tennessee when you went to up to Tennessee to talk to the individual that helped to dispose of Miss Winston's body. That individual told you that he had spoken to Mr. Winston, Mr. McHale Edwards, and he asked him questions about like what happened, correct?
I don't know if he asked or if McHale just volunteered, but while they were burning her body and disposing of her body, then McHale did tell that person how he killed Miss Winston.
But in that, it was an argument that happened in the apartment over her going to another man's apartment, and he strangled her in the apartment. That's just a shortened version of that. That's essentially what he said?
A lot more to it, but yes, that's a shortened version of that. Yes, sir.
All right, but I guess the motive for him killing her at that point was his anger at her seeing another man or potentially seeing another man.
I would assume that, yeah, even though he's married to and stepping out on her, or he stepped out on her during the whole relationship and married to another young lady, but yes.
Right. Well, I'm not saying that
Right.
different rules,
But
I guess different rules for him, but as
I
far
don't
as
want
the
to make
woman
it
was
her sound like, okay, I got you.
yeah, but so he was just basically saying that he told the witness in Tennessee, I killed her because we had an argument about her seeing another guy or going to some other guy's apartment, and that's why he strangled her. Correct?
Correct.
And there was no evidence that, and he didn't say that Breonna Phillips Edwards helped him or advised him to kill her because of that, correct?
No, he did not state that.
All right. In fact, he didn't implicate Breonna Phillips Edwards in any of in the murder at all, correct?
He did not. He did say that she used his phone to communicate with McHale while McHale was up there. And we know that she allowed Mr. Edwards to use her vehicle to drive up there.
Right. Well, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. So with respect, but just so we're clear and just putting a bookend on this part, the witness that helped to dispose of Miss Winston's body in Tennessee said that Mr. McHale told him that he killed her in the apartment, jealousy related, but never once said that Miss Phillips Edwards was involved in that.
Involved in the murder, no.
All right. And
Would have had to know
the
about
argument, right, but that she knew about it after the fact.
I can't say, but yeah,
Well,
we don't have anything to say otherwise.
right. So you have no other evidence to say that Miss Phillips knew about the murder other than after the fact, correct?
Correct.
And there's no evidence that Miss Phillips Edwards knew. Well, we'll leave it at that. Now, when she called him, I think the paperwork I have says that like the last call between her phone and his phone was about 1:53 or 1:50 in the morning. And essentially she just said, what's taking you so long? Would that be fair?
Sorry, repeat that, sir.
Was there a text message from Miss Phillips Edwards' phone to McHale Edwards' phone saying around 1:53 in the morning, saying, what's taking you so long?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yes, sir.
And did he respond that it's just taking a long time to find the documents?
He did.
Okay. So also, as it relates to the apartment, Mr. Mikhail Edwards was on the lease for that apartment with Miss Winston, correct?
He was, but he was supposedly no longer living there. He was supposedly living between Miss Phillips Edwards and his mom's house.
Right. And so, and you have, and I think you all had evidence that he had told his mom, he and his mom had gone to the leasing office to try to get him off of the lease, correct?
That did happen, yes, sir.
All right. And that happened before or after Miss Winston went missing? That
was after.
Okay. But he had told, but as far as we knew, and they went to the leasing office and actually, I don't know what you do, booked out or
He was
got
the
off the
30th,
lease.
like turned in the keys and I think they paid some money to terminate early.
Okay. And then that's when the apartment got cleaned out at that point in time.
I believe he cleaned it out prior to turning in the keys, but yes, like during the same time frame, yes.
Right. But certainly not, the apartment wasn't cleaned out within 3 days of the 17th or 4 days of the 17th.
No, I believe they actually, I think all the communications with the apartment about terminating the lease early and giving the keys, if I'm remember correctly, that was on the 30th
Okay.
of March.
Understood. Now, you don't have any evidence that Miss Phillips Edwards knew that Mikhail Edwards was going to kill Miss Winston before he went to the apartment, do you?
Prior to, no, I do not.
All right. With respect to borrowing her car, there was only one car between them, correct?
It was her vehicle.
Okay, so Mr. Mikhail Edwards did.
Yes.
All right. So there was one car that she would use to take him to work or for him to take her to the academy school, police academy training, correct?
Right. Yes, he previously had one, but it had gotten turned back in. Yes.
Okay.
But during this time, it was just the one.
Just the one car. So as far as you know, from the evidence you have, it wasn't unusual for her to loan him her car, her husband, her car.
No, they would drive each other to the jobs or whatever and then do, I think, DoorDash or something on the side.
And she would regularly take care of his daughter. Was the child a daughter or a son?
Daughter, and I don't know if it was regular. I know she did keep her from, I don't, prior to Miss Winston being deceased, I don't think that she took care of the daughter to my knowledge. But after that, I know that she did keep the daughter and watch the daughter sometimes. Primarily, it was either Mr. Edwards, Miss Winston, or Mr. Edwards' mother.
You mentioned that there were a lot of phone calls from Miss Phillips Edwards, and you said she about 70 phone calls and some text messages on the morning that she was supposed to go to the police academy.
Right, and that would have been I believe the morning of the 18th.
All right. Well, do you have any evidence that suggests, in the forms of text messages or whatever, that Miss Phillips Edwards had been told that Mikhail Edwards would be back early, sooner? I mean, let me rephrase it. You said that she thought that he would be home earlier, and since he wasn't home at that point in time, I'm trying to figure out, is there communication back and forth about that?
Right. So the person in Tennessee that helped dispose of Miss Winston, he stated that she knew that Phillips Winston was contacting his phone because she knew not to contact Edward's phone because he left his phone at his mother's house and to look like he was still in Georgia. And she did contact his phone. And then he had a wreck in her car on the way home. And it wasn't bad, but it did damage the car. And then when it was time for her to go to the job, and she had called up there and told them, because she had range the next day, and to get her some range glasses, like some glasses to wear, goggles, whatever you wear to safety glasses for the range. I forgot where I'm at, but anyway, so when it was time for her to get ready to go, she did text him, like, I don't remember the exact, but it was like, it was calls and texts. And it was like, where are you at? You need to come back, or I need to go to work. You're going to make me lose my job, this kind of stuff. But I don't remember the exact words, but that was the gist of it.
But in none of those words did she say anything about that, acknowledge that she knew that Miss Winston was dead. Is that correct?
I don't believe there was anything like that in there, no.
All right. So nothing like it doesn't take that long to bury a body, nothing, no words like that,
I
correct?
don't think I read anything like that, no, sir.
Okay. So just to close that out, there is no communication from Ms. Phillips Edwards to Mr. McHale Edwards that indicated that she was aware that Miss Winston was deceased, correct?
On the text, I didn't read anything like that. But from the jail calls, the things she said, it would indicate that she did know. And
Well,
after
go ahead.
I would say after so when they left the apartment initially, they, if I remember correctly, they went to McHale's mother's house for a time, and then Miss Phillips Edwards was dropped back off at her apartment. And I believe she took the daughter with her because the mom, I guess, had to work or whatever. But then Mr. Edwards went back to the apartment and then went to Tennessee directly after that. Actually, I think they stopped at the bank from the mom's house before they went back. I believe they stopped at a Wells Fargo.
Just to confirm, you all contend that Miss Winston was murdered. Her time of death was between the midnight and the 2 a.m., or was it at the 4 a.m. when Mr. Edwards returned?
No, I believe it would have been in the first time period because I believe he went back to get her body and to take it to Tennessee.
Did your witness in Tennessee, and I have his name written down, so I don't want to say it, but his name begins with a B.
Yes, sir.
It begins with a B. So did Mr. B, the witness in Tennessee, say that did he indicate that when Miss Phillips Edwards called him, did he say she calls me when she can't reach him? And because I know how to reach him, was there any communication like that? Did you find that out?
I don't recall, sir. It was a whole interview. I can't recall. I'm sorry.
All right. And did he indicate to you that Miss Phillips Edwards said things within his hearing that indicated that she knew that Miss Winston was dead?
I don't recall, but I don't believe so. I think she just contacted his phone indicating she knew where, after she said it, she didn't know where he was going, that he was going to hang out with friends, that he actually went to that one specific friend that she did know, and she had his number and she was contacting him to reach McHale.
Do you have any other of his friends' numbers in her phone that you know of?
I don't know, sir.
And this is the one friend who came down and was the witness in their wedding, correct?
That's what he stated. Yes, sir.
All right. And with respect to the communication that she had, did he say that he forwarded the call? He just said he just handed the phone to Mr. to Mr. McHale Edwards, and Mr. McHale Edwards started talking. I'm sorry, Mr. McHale Edwards. Did he indicate how? Let me rephrase it. Did he tell her McHale's up here in Tennessee with me, or did he just say, "I'll let you talk to McHale"?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe she just called his phone and he gave the phone to McHale.
All right. Just a second. Do you have any recorded statements from Miss Phillips Edwards indicating participation in the murder or in giving and authorizing her car to go be used to dispose of the body?
I don't believe so, no, sir.
All right. And you mentioned that she said to him on the phone calls, they're listening, but when you call from the jail, I mean, it actually says these calls are recorded, doesn't it?
It does, but when he would say certain things, he brought up several topics, and both she and his mom, I don't know if they were three-waying in or if she was over there with the mom, but they would shush him and remind him that it's being recorded. And he specifically told her to dispose of evidence, and she made that happen along with McHale's family members.
Do you have any evidence that Miss Phillips Edwards actually participated in the destruction of evidence?
I'm trying to think. I know we had gotten a text from the brother's phone indicating what happened, and I know, so she had to have participated at least at giving direction, because Mr. McHale Edwards stated to her, he described the shoes and the gloves and where they would be located. He told her to make sure that they were disposed of, and he said burn them. And then it was another jail call where he asked her if she'd gotten rid of that, and it was repeated a couple of times, and she said yes, yeah, yeah. So yes, she knew, and I don't know if she physically did it, but she knew to do it, and she gave the little brother direction to do it.
And when you say she gave the little brother direction to do it, what evidence do you have of that? Did she text him that, or?
So she was the only one. She was on the phone with Mikhail when he told her specifically what to get rid of. And then the little brother, we had a text out of his phone to another person stating that he had taken care of those things by burning them. So there's no way he would have known to do that, because he specifically told her what to do, and it happened. So there's no other way to do that.
But my question is, but I thought you said that he made that statement while she was on the phone along with his mother.
They were trading off the phone. He did so he spoke to her. I think he spoke to his mom. I can't remember, but I think he spoke to the mom first. And then he called her Muffin. That was his nickname for her. He asked to speak to Muffin. And he told her specifically where the shoes were, what they looked like, and the gloves, and where they were at in his room. And then told to make sure that his little brother she said, make sure that he does, she said, then he got on the phone with the brother and said, Muffin's got a job for you. Listen to what she says, or something like that. I don't remember the exact verbiage. This is a lot in this case file, so I can't remember the word for word, but to that effect, it was to do whatever Muffin tells him to do, which was to burn the shoes and the gloves. And he texted another party about that later.
So did the brother tell you that she helped him? She gave him the shoes and gave him the gloves? I'm just trying to get clarity on that.
I believe he wanted an attorney. I don't believe he said anything. That's just information we got out of his phone.
All right. So just basically inferentially, you're inferring that she actually participated in that, but all you know is that he told her, he made the request on the phone with her and also with his mother, and then told his brother, talk to Muffin. And that's really it that you know as far as Breonna Phillips Edwards' involvement is. Beyond inference, just tangible words, texts.
We know he gave her directions, and we know that the little brother did the act.
Okay. Just a second. In the course of your interview with Miss Phillips Edwards, she also told you that he had told her that he had wrecked the car like at Adairsville or something like that, correct?
I believe that's correct. I didn't interview her, it was someone else, but yes, she did state that in an interview.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. And did you all determine that was true or no?
The car was wrecked. I don't know if it was there or not, but they didn't make a police report. I think they tried to make one after the fact for insurance purposes, but it was not documented at the time.
All right. Did you have any evidence? Hold on one second. When you interviewed witnesses or when you all canvassed to see if anybody heard anything, no one heard any sounds of a struggle from the apartment on the night that you believe Miss Winston was murdered, correct?
I don't believe so.
All right. No screams, nothing like that?
I don't believe so.
All right. And nothing is recorded on the video or any audio to those videos that would give rise to a struggle that you know of, correct? At one point, did Mr. Mikhail Edwards actually tell his mother and Miss Winston did Mr. Mikhail Edwards tell his mom or Miss Phillips Edwards that Miss Winston had texted him saying that she was leaving and was going to leave her child with him?
I'm not, I think that was on the 18th. So the day he got back from Tennessee that morning when Miss Phillips Edwards was supposed to go to work, it would have been I believe in the afternoon about, I can't remember the exact time, but it was 4 or 5 o'clock, something like that. And he did state that. And we have evidence that Miss Winston did not send that text.
Right. No, I agree. But so Miss Winston didn't send the text, but did the text come from Miss Winston's phone?
It did.
Okay. And that information, the statement that Miss Winston made that Miss Winston purportedly made in that text message, that was communicated to Mr. Mikhail Edwards' mother, correct? or Mr. McHale Edwards' mom was told about that text, correct?
Told about, I'm sorry, told about what, sir?
The text message that was sent from the victim's phone.
Oh, yeah, yes, she was. I think several people were. Yes, sir.
All right. They were all told by McHale Edwards that this is what she sent me.
I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have any recorded statements of McHale Edwards specifically implicating Breonna Phillips Edwards in the murder?
I don't believe so.
Do you have any statements from McHale Edwards, whether it's on recording or whatever, excluding her from the murder?
No, I don't believe so. He didn't really, he was not a very, he did speak with us during an interview. He was not super, well, he would answer some questions and he refused to answer a lot of questions, just stared at the detective. So it's not like we interviewed him and he just freely talked. So
I got you. Well, I mean, like on the jail calls,
he would deny today that he did this. So
I understand, but on the jail calls, did he say anything on the jail calls that either exonerated or implicated Miss Phillips Edwards in the murder?
specifically those words, no, I don't believe so.
All right. Well, specifically, I'm just saying, did he give words that suggested that she wasn't involved in the murder on the jail calls to
No.
anyone?
You said that
Right.
she was not involved?
Yeah, like did he say, words to the effect of,
Neither way, sir. I don't believe it was either way.
okay. I think I'm almost done. As part of the Mr. Edwards getting to Tennessee, he actually called his Mr. B, he called his friend in Tennessee and asked him for directions as to how to get to his home, correct?
Because he didn't have his phone with him for GPS, that's correct.
Okay. At the time that you all spoke to Miss Winston, I mean, not Miss Winston, when you spoke to Miss, for a second, both of these women's names, first names are Breonna.
I know,
but spelled different.
it's hard to, I know, I do the same thing.
Yeah, so it's Breonna Winston and Breonna Phillips Edwards. So I'm going to refer to Miss Phillips Edwards now. With respect to Miss Phillips Edwards, when you all interviewed her at that time, this was just he had only been arrested for the stalking charge, correct?
I believe I don't believe, I'm not 100% sure he was arrested at all yet. He may have been, but I'm not sure that he was arrested because we did not arrest. He was arrested after his interview for other warrants in another jurisdiction that had nothing to do with his case. And I don't believe that, I'm not sure, 100% sure that he was arrested by us. He was under arrest in another jurisdiction at the time, but I don't believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think he was arrested by us at that time, but I could be mistaken.
Right, right. And I guess what I'm saying is that and hold on one second. I'm sorry. So what I'm trying to focus on is at the time that you were interviewing Miss Phillips Edwards, no one had told her that this was a murder investigation, a missing persons investigation. She was not aware of what the type of investigation was, or what did you tell her?
And I didn't do the interview, but she was aware. I'm 100% sure that she was aware it was a missing person investigation.
Right. Just the missing persons, but not a murder case.
I don't think we highly suspected, but I don't think we were aware, like confirmed that Miss Winston was deceased at that time. We believe she was, but she was not found at that time.
Did you all indicate to her, like, that she needed to account for his whereabouts during any particular time?
Yes, between the 16th and 17th.
Yes.
Yes.
And you told her she needed to account for his whereabouts from the time that they had seen arriving at the apartment all the way through until she saw him again? Or I'm trying to figure out when you said,
I believe
the
so.
time frame.
Yeah, I know. This is from memory from her interview, but she stated that she had took him to work that day. I think it was late, and like he's supposed to be there a certain time. And I think he was late. He worked at his job and got off I don't remember, it was 11 or 11:30, something like that, which was not super close by. It was in the metro, but it wasn't super close by. And then from there, they drove to Winston's apartment, supposedly to get a social security card and birth certificate for the child, due taxes. And then do you want me to go through everything that I can remember she said, or you're talking about Mr.
No, you go ahead. Just you
Edwards
can sum it up. Yes.
Okay, so she stated that they went to her apartment and she first stated it was like 30 minutes or something that he was in there, but she was like sleepy or whatever, so she's like kind of in and out. And then she changed it to like 45 minutes, but said she had left to get her laptop. But then she later stated that was not true. She stated that she stated that they went to her mom's apartment or house or residence to get her laptop after that. And that was not true either.
Let me interrupt you for a second. On that point, instead of going to her mom's, they actually went to his mom's house.
Yes,
Correct?
I believe that
Okay.
was to pick up the child and take the child back to her apartment to keep the child. And then he went to go dispose of Miss Winston.
Understood. And so now just to kind of fill it up and make sure I covered all of my points. You have no evidence that Miss Phillips Edwards was aware that Mr. Edwards was going to kill Miss Winston before he went to that apartment, correct?
Prior to, no,
All right.
but I'm
And
sure that she knew after the fact.
and you also have the evidence that Mr. Edwards said that he killed Miss Winston in response, basically out of jealousy because she was going to see another man.
That's what
Correct?
he told his friend in Tennessee. Yes.
All right. And then in his statement to you all, he told some other lie. He told a lie to you all about where she was, correct?
About Miss Winston. Yes, that's correct.
Did Miss Phillips Edwards speak to you in the past tense about Miss Winston at all? Did you even ask her about Miss Winston?
You said Miss Phillips Edwards
Yes.
asked about
Did
Miss
you
Winston?
did you ask her questions about Miss Winston
I
specifically?
didn't do the interview, so it's just I read it, and it's been a while since I've read it, but that was the whole point of the interview, was to find out, about Mr. Edwards and to find out about Miss Winston. And she was aware that she was missing.
Okay. Did she tell you about the text message that, the fake text message that he sent from Miss Winston's phone to his phone?
I believe she had two different interviews, and I believe she did talk about that, but I don't recall which interview. It may have, I'm not sure which interview it was in, sir.
Understood. All right. And then as to the conspiracy warrant is predicated upon the shoes and the gloves being destroyed.
Upon destruction of evidence, yes, sir.
All right. But you have no actual evidence that she committed some overt act, like she actually gave them the shoes or anything like that.
He was part of the conspiracy because he told her to do it. And then I know the mother knew about it. And then he confirmed with her that it was done. So we know that whether she physically did set the fire or whether she stood there and watched it burn, I'm not sure. But I know that she was involved in making the evidence go away before the police even knew the evidence existed.
And when you say she was involved, you mean that what you do have evidence of is that she knew and apparently approved.
So she knew, she was the one that was given directions, and it happened. And then he confirmed with her later that was done on jail calls. So we know that she knows, and she knows what happened to him, and whether she physically lit it on fire, I don't know, but she certainly, she acknowledged that she understood what needed to happen, and she had warned him about not saying stuff about like that on jail calls. So she has to know, because if I'm telling you something on a jail call that is not something abnormal or not something to worry about if the police hear, you're not going to caution somebody to be talking about that. And then she acknowledged that she understood to burn the shoes. And then later he confirms that it happened. He like 3 times, I believe it was like 3 times he asked that, did they take care of that? Did they take care of that? And she said, yes. And I think he said burn them, and yes. So she knew she's part of that conspiracy to get rid of the shoe evidence and the glove evidence that they had used.
Right. And just that last part there, you said that when he said that they take care of it, meaning he said, did you all take care of it? Or did he say did they, meaning his mother and brother?
I think he said, did y'all, or did you all or y'all or whatever take care of it?
Okay.
I don't believe he named something specific, someone specific.
All right. Did he say why he wanted the shoes and gloves burned?
He stated that he wanted them gone, and then she cautioned him on that same jail call. And then I don't remember if it was the same jail call it may have been, or another jail call where, because she told him, don't be talking about like, and that's not the only instance. This is just the specific one that I remember the best. She would caution him on the jail calls, and his mom would, that, the police can be listening and it can be recorded and everything, which again, you stated that it says that straight up at the front, and it does. But my point was that later, after she cautioned him, then he started saying, yeah, they really stink. They stink really bad. They stink really, really bad. I think the dog defecated on it. They stink really bad. But that's obviously, I mean, when you're doing all that, it's drawing more attention, because if the dog defecated on the shoes, then you would have taken care of that straight away, not like after you got arrested. And it doesn't make sense. And I wouldn't set shoes in my house that a dog had done that to.
So, but bottom line is he did not link the shoes or the gloves to a crime. He just linked it to a dog defecating on them.
Well, that's what he said after he was strongly, I don't even want to say admonished. I don't know what the word I'm trying to find is, but she was very adamant that he quit talking about stuff like that on jail calls. So that was his, I guess he thought about it a minute and came up with a excuse for the reason to get rid of them, which does not make any sense.
And the last part is, so you're telling me Mr. Edwards didn't let his own mother know, or I guess Miss Winston's family know, or Miss Phillips Edwards' family know that he was marrying their daughter, Miss Brianna Phillips Edwards, correct?
I don't believe any, from what I understand, the only person that besides those two that knew was the friend in Tennessee. That's
Okay.
to my.
I think that is all my questions, or are all my questions. I should use the proper grammar.
All right, any redirect, Attorney Freeman?
Yes, I just want to clarify one thing. Detective, you stated in your testimony that that Mikhail Edwards, when he was talking to, I believe, his brother, he referred to someone as Muffin, getting information from Muffin. Who did you learn is Muffin?
Muffin is Miss Brianna Edwards Phillips. That's his nickname for him. And they regularly on text from jail, he refers to her as Muffin. And everybody's aware that everybody, like, I think his mom and his brother even call her Muffin. I don't think anybody calls her by her name. I think they just all call her Muffin.
And that was when he was telling his brother that Muffin had information to give regarding the shoes and gloves. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's all I had, Judge. No further questions.
No redirect. I just have argument.
All righty. Closing argument.
Judge, the state waives opening.
Okay.
You tell me to hold on because I wasn't talking for that.
Hold on half a second.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Attorney Clements.
Your Honor, I'm going to sort of direct the court's attention. I know the court has a copy of the warrant and even the arrest warrant on the party to the crime for murder. All it says, and it's really legally significant, is that it just says Miss Phillips Edwards was basically present. From the detective's testimony, and I asked her, I think 3 different times in 3 different ways, whether Brianna Phillips Edwards had any knowledge that Mr. Edwards was going to commit a murder there, and she answered no, they had no evidence. The other thing that's most significant is that there's no way that she could have ever had any evidence or knowledge of him agreeing or planning to commit a murder, because the only evidence we do have is that he killed Miss Winston, whom he had been stalking and had been arrested for aggravated stalking and a prior domestic violence incident that we didn't go to what the charge was. But we know for a fact that he told the man that helped them to dispose of her body in Tennessee that he killed Miss Winston because she was going to another man's apartment or to see another man. That's a murder that happened as a product of what took place once he arrived at that house by himself, unconnected to Miss Phillips Edwards. She was in the car, asleep by her own words to the detective, or partially asleep. But the key point is, I asked the detective repeatedly, do they have any evidence that Miss Phillips Edwards knew or was involved in it? And the answer is no. And all the stuff after the fact, and first of all, 16220, which is the party to the crime statute, addresses the fact that you have to intentionally aid, not incidentally aid. You have to intentionally counsel or advise or encourage. There is a joint operation in both parties' minds. In this instance, they went to the apartment for the purposes of getting the Social Security card. We have corroboration of that fact because, as the detective said, the text from Miss Phillips Edwards to Mr. Edwards was, "What's taking so long?" And he replied back, "It's taken a while to find the card." She was in the car asleep. The point being is there's absolutely no way for her to have known that an argument was going to ensue and that he was going to kill her over some jealousy or whatever it is that he did because of his preoccupation with Miss Winston. There's just nothing. But more importantly, there's the detective's affirmative statements. I have no evidence that she knew he was going to kill her. I have no evidence that she participated in the crime. There's just none. So she cannot be a party to the crime of murder. Also, I would point out that there was no joint operation, intent, plan, motive. There was even no motive for Miss Phillips Edwards to do it. At best, she would have been happy if she had known that this woman was going to see another man. That would have certainly made her happier, I would presume. But the fact remains there was no animus between the two. There was no arguments between Miss Phillips Edwards and Miss Winston. Miss Phillips Edwards watched their child, as we've heard from the detective, and the most damning part of it is the detective said there's no evidence of Miss Phillips Edwards' knowledge beforehand. And that is absolutely a legal requirement. It is not waivable. We do not have accessory after the fact in Georgia. So you cannot be liable for the crime after the fact should you learn about it. But we know that the crime occurred and it appeared to be spontaneous in nature or arose once he got there. As it relates to the tampering of evidence or the conspiracy to dispose of evidence, we have the statement, but everything else we have is literally pure speculation. It doesn't even rise to the level of hearsay. Hearsay is admissible, but speculation is not. And in this instance, all we have is that he told her to get rid of that. He supposedly told her about putting it on, whatever a dog had defecated in the shoes and to burn it. But they have no evidence of an overt act by Miss Winston. And that is another element that you have to have for a conspiracy: an unlawful agreement and an overt act. And at this juncture, they have not even established what made the agreement unlawful. They haven't established knowledge of a crime. They haven't established knowledge that those gloves or shoes were used in a crime. There's nothing there. There's just, hey, burn my shoes, which the police have now determined could have been the shoes that were used in this murder. But again, there's no evidence that Miss Phillips Edwards was aware that they were evidence of a crime. There's no information that Miss Phillips Edwards entered into an unlawful agreement, and there's no evidence that she engaged in any overt act. It's not even circumstantial. It's just not there. In addition, that's clearly the fact there. Likewise, as it relates to Miss Phillips Edwards reaching out to my clients or reaching out to the gentleman in Tennessee, I asked the question of, did that man implicate Miss Phillips Edwards? And the answer was no. He told me he strangled her after an argument that occurred over another man, basically jealousy. There's no possible way for her, as this warrant charges, to have loaned him her car to travel to the incident location to murder Breonna Winston, because the intent, desire, or whatever you want to call it, to murder Miss Winston did not occur until after he was in the apartment and after they had some confrontation. And then lastly, to the extent the detective makes points that Miss Phillips Edwards told Mr. Edwards not to say anything on the jail calls, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's an admonition on the front end. He was facing criminal charges. He is her husband. It's like, quit saying stuff because they're recording it. There's nothing criminal about that at all. It's not even evidence of a crime. I mean, anybody would tell somebody that, hey, they're recording your calls, and the jail tells them. And if it makes her a party to something, then it must make whoever provides the phone service to the jail also a party. All she did was remind him. And I note that his mother reminded him as well. And his mother is not a party to any of these crimes. So as a matter of law, the party to the crime cannot stand. And as a matter of fact, it can't stand either, because what the detective said, no prior knowledge, no agreement, no intent, no circumstantial evidence on that point. And as I would argue to the court, as a matter of fact, the conspiracy charge cannot stand. But to the extent that the court thinks probable cause exists, I would argue that it only exists as to the conspiracy charge, but the detective's testimony has absolutely precluded, factually and legally, party to the crime. That's what I have.
All right, Attorney Freeman.
Thank you, Judge. We're asking that both charges are bound over to Superior Court. You know, the state disagrees with Attorney Clemens that Detective Moore's testimony legally precludes the party to a crime. In fact, it gives the probable cause to bind both charges over. Regarding the party to a crime, Judge, let me just read to you what this says. However, it says such presence, mere presence, is one of the circumstances from which the defendant's participation may be inferred, along with the defendant's companionship and conduct before and after the offense. What Detective Moore said is, based on the defendant's actions after they learned what had happened with Ms. Winston, that's when they, at that point, believed that she was party to a crime. Her companionship, Judge, her conduct before and after the offense. Ms. Winston herself even admitted to giving the false statements, and she could not give an explanation as to why she made that false statement. She just said that she did. She drove, she allowed Mr. Mikhail Edwards to drive her vehicle to the residence. It is our contention that he went there to murder Ms. Winston, regardless of why he was going to do it. He and Ms. Phillips Edwards had already secretly gotten married, but he was still seeing Ms. Winston. Ms. Phillips Edwards was not asleep in the vehicle. I think the testimony was that she was in and out. Even though we don't have anything to show that she got outside of the car, she did allow her car to be used in the transport of Mr. Edwards when he murdered Ms. Winston. Judge, we also have the evidence that when Ms. Winston indicated that she didn't know any of Mr. Edwards' friends, well, Detective Moore testified that they found that to be false, as she repeatedly texted his friend in Tennessee because she knew that's where Mr. Edwards was. The jail calls, Judge, regarding the taking care of the shoes and gloves, that based on that information, detectives knew that Ms. Phillips Edwards knew what happened and knew what needed to happen to the shoes and gloves, which in fact they were burned. Now, whether or not she actually did the burning or she gave the instructions to, she was part of that, Judge. And so when you look at all of what happened in this case, Judge, the totality of it and the information that Detective Moore provided regarding Ms. Phillips Edwards' participation, we believe that there is sufficient probable cause to bind both charges over, the party to a crime of murder as well as the conspiracy to commit the crime. And I believe that would be tampering with evidence. And so we're asking that you bind both charges over to Superior Court.
Now, what did you say about the tampering with evidence? How is that playing a part?
I was that's the part where with the jail calls judge when Detective Moore testified that that her co-defendant Mikhail Edwards referred to her as Muffin, told the brother that Muffin has some instructions for you. When he told Miss Phillips Edwards about what needed to happen with the shoes and glove, when she said, they can hear you. And then when he came back and, and asked, was it taken care of? And she said, yes. So Judge, we believe that all of that information regarding the instructions regarding burning the shoes and gloves, the confirmation that they had been burned, all supports a probable cause on the conspiracy to commit the crime of tampering with evidence.
But that's not how they have it. The warrant is not based on tampering with evidence, right? It's not based.
It is the warrant for conspiracy to commit a crime, Judge. It does say to commit the offense of tampering with evidence.
Okay, that's how the warrant reads.
Yes.
Okay. And your position that tampering with evidence after the crime is committed still is conspiracy to commit a crime?
Yes, Judge. It's a commit the tampering with evidence, the burning of the shoes and gloves to get rid of evidence that was related to the murder.
Okay, I'm not. I'm having problems with that. Conspiracy to commit a crime. When he, together with one or more persons, conspires to commit any crime. So you're not, based on the evidence that I've heard, there's no suggestion that she knew, not from Detective Moore, that they could definitively say that she knew about that Mr. Edward was going to murder the victim. There was nothing presented that she was going to do that he was going to do that, right?
Judge, I think so the party to a crime, so she has two warrants. We have the party to a crime, and that's for the murder. And then we have the conspiracy to commit a crime, and that's tampering with evidence.
All right, so here is where I am. So it's obvious that, or for me, it's obvious that based on the evidence that has been presented here today, Mr. Edwards went over to the victim's house, got upset because of some kind of jealous rage, sounds like. He ends up strangling her. He went in for the purpose of obtaining, so he says, birth certificates and other information for tax purposes. He ends up killing her. Wife is outside, or Brianna's outside in the car. There is absolutely nothing that leads the court in any way to believe that Brianna had any knowledge beforehand that he was going to go in here and do this. As far as I'm concerned, based on the evidence, it doesn't appear that he had intention on killing her. It sounds like, based on what was told, that he became upset. An argument ensued, and then that's when he strangled her. That's what I gathered from what was provided here as testimony. Did she? I think that it is clear that she participated after the fact, based upon the investigation, that she either burned or caused the items, the shoes and so forth, to be burned, that she contacted someone, his friend in Tennessee, to get assistance with getting the body up there. So I think it is clear that she participated, but I believe she participated after the fact and had no knowledge prior to. So I'm gonna dismiss, there's no probable cause to party to the crime, so party to a crime is gonna be dismissed for lack of probable cause. Conspiracy to commit a crime, I do find that there is sufficient probable cause. I think that we're skating there, but I am gonna find that there is sufficient probable cause to bind conspiracy to commit a crime over to the Superior Court of Clayton County, and that is the order of the court.
Before we go, can we just leave, will we just leave, now that it's the Superior Court only offense is dismissed, can we just leave Ms. Phillips Edwards on the bond hearing, or will the court set bond on the conspiracy charge today?
So you can speak with this Attorney Freeman, if you got to work something out.
Well,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry, because you were
I
going
couldn't
in
hear
and out.
Attorney Clemens wanted to speak with you about bond in reference to Ms. Edwards, Ms. Phillips Edwards.
No, the state is not consenting to a bond at this time, and we would ask that this charge also, because it is regarding this murder, that it still be heard in Superior Court, Judge, because I believe when the state will be seeking out indictment regarding the murder charges.
Okay, so I don't agree that this has to be, the bond has to be heard on this conspiracy based upon the tampering of evidence. But I will look at I will look at the statute and see if anything precludes me from hearing the conspiracy based on the tampering of evidence.
Would that be on the calendar scheduled for the 7th, or we're gonna do that today?
Well,
Because
if
we were
it's
on the
today,
7th calendar.
today, then it'll have to be on the 7th.
I'm sorry, I could not hear you.
If you guys can't come up with anything today, then it would have to go on the bond calendar for Friday.
Okay, well then, I can be excused now because the state's not going to agree, and so we'll just come in on Friday.
Okay, all righty.
Yeah, because the state just said she's not going to consent.
No.
All right. All righty.